Keanu Reeves had always been the kind of person who listened more than he spoke. Even when cameras flashed and fans shouted his name, he'd often just nod, smile softly, and keep walking. But behind that quiet exterior was a mind that never stopped thinking, especially about people who didn't get seen, didn't get heard, and definitely didn't get movie roles or standing ovations. For years, he'd quietly helped others. He'd donated millions to children's hospitals, supported cancer research, and even gave away big chunks of his movie earnings without telling anyone. But lately, something had been weighing on him more than usual. It started one rainy evening in Los Angeles. He was leaving a recording studio after working on a soundtrack when he saw a man sitting under a bus stop awning, soaked, holding a cardboard sign that read, "Anything helps." God bless, the man wasn't asking for much, just a chance to stay dry, maybe get a warm meal. Keanu stopped, walked over, and handed him a $20 bill along with a bottle of water from his car. But it wasn't the money that stuck with Keanu. It was the look in the man's eyes. Not shame, not anger, just exhaustion, like he'd been carrying the weight of the world for so long, he'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. They talked for a few minutes. The man had once worked in construction, had a family, even owned a small house. Then an injury, then medical bills, then everything fell apart. "People walk right past you like you're air," he said quietly. "Like you stopped being human the day you lost your roof." That sentence haunted Keanu for weeks. He kept thinking, what if I could see the world through his eyes? Not just for an hour, but for real? He knew handing out cash or writing checks wasn't enough. Not when the problem was so deep, so woven into the fabric of everyday life. He wanted to understand, not as a celebrity, not as someone with power or protection, but as just a person, someone invisible. So he reached out to a non-profit group that worked with people experiencing homelessness. He didn't call as Keanu Reeves, movie star. He used a different name, explained his idea carefully, and made one thing very clear. This wasn't for a film, not for publicity, and absolutely not for social media. If anyone found out who he really was during the experiment, he'd stop immediately. The organization was skeptical at first. Who wouldn't be? But after a few long conversations and seeing his sincerity, they agreed to help. They gave him guidelines: stay safe, check in daily, and never put himself or others in danger. The night before he began, Keanu sat alone in his apartment. He packed nothing, no phone, no wallet, no watch. Just the clothes on his back and a small backpack with a change of socks, a toothbrush, and a thin blanket. He shaved off his beard, cut his hair short and messy, and put on old jeans, a faded hoodie, and worn-out sneakers donated by a shelter. He looked in the mirror. The man staring back wasn't Neo, wasn't John Wick. He was just someone tired, someone easy to overlook. Early the next morning, before the city fully woke up, he walked to a busy part of downtown Los Angeles. He chose a McDonald's near a bus terminal, not because it was special, but because it was ordinary. A place where people came and went without noticing much. He found a spot near the side of the building, away from the main entrance, but close enough to hear the hum of the kitchen and smell the coffee. He laid down a piece of cardboard someone had thrown out and sat quietly. At first, everything felt strange. The cold concrete under him, the noise of traffic, the way people glanced his way and then quickly looked away, as if making eye contact might somehow pull them into his reality. He felt exposed, vulnerable, feelings he hadn't known in decades. But he stayed still. He watched. By mid-morning, the McDonald's started filling up. Office workers grabbed breakfast sandwiches. Tourists asked for directions. A group of teenagers laughed loudly near the playground. And then, slowly, others like him began to appear. People with backpacks, shopping carts, layers of clothing even in the mild weather. Some sat on benches. Others leaned against the wall sipping from paper cups. No one spoke much. There was an unspoken understanding. This space was shared but fragile. A staff member came out to take out the trash. She didn't say anything, but she didn't shoo anyone away either. Later, a different worker, a young man with tired eyes, left a full cup of coffee on the edge of a nearby table before walking back inside. No words, just kindness, quiet and simple. Keanu realized something important. Survival wasn't just about food or shelter. It was about dignity, about being allowed to exist in public without being treated like a problem. As the day wore on, hunger set in. He hadn't eaten since the night before. He watched people toss half-eaten burgers or leave untouched fries on trays. Normally, he'd never consider going through someone's trash, but now it felt like the only option. With his heart pounding, he waited until no one was looking and quickly checked a nearby bin. He found a wrapped cheeseburger still warm. It wasn't glamorous, but it was food. He ate it slowly, grateful. That evening, as the sun dipped below the buildings, he met someone who would change everything. An older man, maybe in his 50s, sat down a few feet away. He didn't speak at first, just nodded. After a while, he said, "First time?" Keanu didn't lie. "Yeah," the man gave a small, knowing smile. "It gets easier. Or harder. Depends on the day." They talked for hours about jobs lost, systems broken, nights spent wondering if tomorrow would be better. The man spoke without bitterness, just truth. He'd been coming to this McDonald's for months. Not just for the food, but because the staff let him use the restroom to wash his face, brush his teeth, and sometimes just sit in a clean, quiet place for 10 minutes. "This spot," he said, "it's not much. But it's mine." Keanu listened, really listened. And for the first time, he understood that homelessness wasn't just about lacking a house. It was about lacking connection, safety, and the basic belief that you mattered. As night fell and the streets grew colder, Keanu pulled his thin blanket tighter. He thought about his warm bed, his quiet home, the life he could return to any time, but he also thought about the people who couldn't. He wasn't here to play a role. He was here to learn. And as the city lights flickered above him, he made a silent promise, to himself, and to the strangers around him, that whatever he discovered in the days ahead, he wouldn't forget. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do isn't to give money, but to show up, sit down, and see the world through someone else's eyes. The second day started before sunrise. Cold seeped through the cardboard beneath him, and his back ached in a way it never had before. He sat up slowly, blinking against the gray morning light. The city was already stirring, delivery trucks rumbling, street sweepers humming, the distant wail of a siren. Around him, others were waking too, rolling up thin blankets, tucking belongings into backpacks, moving quietly like shadows trying not to be seen. He walked to the McDonald's side door and waited. A few minutes later, a staff member opened it to take out a bag of trash. Their eyes met for just a second, but instead of looking away or frowning, the worker gave a small nod. That tiny gesture, almost invisible, felt like a lifeline. It said, "You're still a person. I see you." Inside, the smell of coffee and frying oil wrapped around him like an old blanket. He didn't go in, couldn't really without money. But he lingered near the entrance, watching. People came and went. Tired parents with strollers, night shift workers grabbing a quick bite, students with backpacks and earbuds. No one paid him much mind. And that was the point. To be there but not noticed. To exist without being questioned. By mid-morning, hunger returned with a sharp edge. His stomach growled loudly, embarrassingly. He spotted a tray left on a table near the window. Half a muffin, a few cold fries, and a mostly full cup of orange juice. He waited until the area was clear, then stepped inside quickly, grabbed the tray, and slipped back out. He ate every bite, even the soggy fries. Nothing tasted better. Later, the older man from the night before showed up again. He carried a small duffel bag slung over one shoulder, and moved with the careful slowness of someone who'd been on the streets longer than he cared to remember. He sat on the same bench, patted the space beside him, and said, "You lasted the night." That's something. They fell into an easy rhythm after that. The man didn't ask personal questions, and neither did Keanu. Instead, they talked about the weather, the bus schedules, which nearby stores let people refill water bottles. Practical things, survival things. But between the lines, stories emerged. The man had once worked in a warehouse, loading trucks for 12 hours a day. He'd been good at it. Reliable, strong, proud. Then a forklift accident crushed his leg. The company offered a small settlement, but medical bills swallowed it whole. After that, finding steady work became impossible. "People see the limp," he said quietly, "and they stop seeing the worker." Keanu listened, not as a famous actor, but as someone trying to understand. He noticed how the man always kept his clothes clean, how he brushed his hair every morning using a cracked mirror from his bag, how he saved every receipt from job applications like proof he hadn't given up. At noon, a young cashier, a woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read Lena, came outside during her break. She didn't look at either of them directly, but she left 2 wrapped cheeseburgers on a nearby ledge before heading back in. No words, just food. The older man picked one up, handed the other to Keanu and said, "She does that sometimes. Never says why. But she sees us." That small act of kindness stayed with Keanu all afternoon. It wasn't charity in the loud, performative way he was used to. It was quiet, human, like she wasn't helping the homeless, she was helping people. As the day wore on, Keanu began to notice patterns. The McDonald's wasn't just a place to eat. It was a kind of unofficial community center. People came to charge phones using outdoor outlets when they worked, to warm up on cold days, to rest when their feet hurt too much to walk. Some used the restroom to wash their faces, comb their hair, or just sit in silence for a few minutes away from the noise of the street. But not everyone was welcome. A security guard from a nearby office building walked by and glared. "You can't stay here all day," he snapped, though no rule actually said that. The older man lowered his head, didn't argue. Just stood up and moved a few feet down the sidewalk. Keanu felt a hot wave of anger but also helplessness. What could he do, argue? Get them both kicked out? He stayed quiet, but the injustice burned. Later, a group of teenagers passed by, laughing loudly. One of them mimicked holding a sign and whined, "Spare change, mister?" The others laughed. Keanu's fists clenched, but the older man just sighed and said, "Happens every week. They don't know better, or they don't care." There was no bitterness in his voice, just resignation. That hurt more than anger ever could. By evening, rain began to fall, light at first, then steady. People scrambled to find cover. Keanu ducked under the awning near the drive-thru, pulling his hoodie tighter. The older man joined him, wringing water from his sleeves. "Rain's the worst," he said. "Makes everything heavier. Clothes, shoes, your spirit." They sat in silence for a while, watching cars splash through puddles. Then the man spoke again, softer this time. "I've got an interview tomorrow. At a warehouse. They said my leg might not be a problem if I can pass the physical." He pulled a wrinkled piece of paper from his pocket. Printed directions, a time, a contact name. "I just need to look presentable. That's why I come here. The mirror in the restroom helps." Keanu looked at him, really looked. This wasn't just about a job. It was about hope, about dignity, about wanting to stand tall again, even if the world kept trying to push him down. That night, as they settled back onto the sidewalk, Keanu made a decision. He wouldn't just observe. He'd help in whatever small way he could without revealing who he was. The next morning, before the older man woke, Keanu went through his own meager belongings and found a clean undershirt he hadn't worn yet. He left it folded neatly beside him. No note, just a quiet offering. When the older man saw it, he didn't say thank you out loud, but he gave Keanu a look, deep, grateful, full of understanding. And in that moment, Keanu realized something powerful. Connection didn't need words. Sometimes it just needed presence. The days blurred together after that. Hunger, cold, the constant awareness of being watched or judged. But also moments of unexpected warmth. A stranger sharing a cigarette. A bus driver slowing down to let someone cross. A barista slipping an extra pastry into a cup for someone who looks like they could use it. Keanu began to see the city differently. Not as a backdrop for movies or red carpets, but as a living, breathing place full of invisible stories. Every person he passed had a history, a struggle, a dream they hadn't given up on, even if it was just to find a dry place to sleep. And through it all, the McDonald's remained a strange kind of anchor. Not perfect, not a solution, but a place where for a few hours a day people could feel a little less alone. As the fifth night fell, Keanu lay on his cardboard staring up at the slice of sky between the buildings. He was exhausted, sore, and humbled, but he also felt something else, clarity. He'd come to understand that homelessness wasn't a choice. It was a series of broken systems, bad luck, and missed chances, and the crushing weight of being treated like you didn't matter. He didn't know what he'd do next. But he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't unsee what he'd seen, and he wouldn't forget the quiet strength of the people who survived here, day after day, with nothing but hope in each other. Tomorrow would be different. He could feel it. Something was about to change, not just for him, but for everyone sitting on this sidewalk, waiting for a break, a chance, or just a warm cup of coffee on a cold night. The sixth morning started with tension in the air, thick and heavy like the city knew something was about to shift. Keanu woke to the sound of raised voices. He sat up quickly, his body stiff from another night on the hard ground. Near the McDonald's entrance, two security guards stood with crossed arms, talking sharply to a small group of people who'd been sleeping nearby. One of them was the older man, the one who'd shared stories, job applications, and quiet moments of hope. "No loitering," one guard said, voice flat and final. "You've been warned before. If you're not buying anything, you can't stay," the older man tried to explain. "I'm just waiting for the bus. Got an interview in an hour." He held up the wrinkled paper like proof. "Doesn't matter," the guard shot back. "Store policy. Move along or we call the cops." Keanu's stomach dropped. This wasn't just about rules, it was about power. About who got to exist in public space and who didn't. He stood slowly, brushing dirt from his jeans, and walked over. "Hey," he said, calm but firm. "He's not causing trouble. He's just sitting." The guards turned, eyes narrowing. "And you are?" "Just someone who sees what's happening," Keanu replied. That's when things went sideways. One guard stepped closer, voice rising. "You think you're special? You think you get to decide the rules?" He pointed a finger. "Both of you, gone in 2 minutes, or you're getting cited." People nearby stopped walking. A few customers at outdoor tables glanced over, uncomfortable but silent. The older man looked down, shoulders slumped. Keanu could see the shame creeping in, the kind that wasn't about being poor but about being treated like you were less than human. Something inside Keanu snapped, not with anger but with clarity. He didn't raise his voice. He just stood his ground. You don't have to be cruel to do your job. That's when it happened. A young woman working the morning shift, Lena, the one who'd left cheeseburgers on the ledge, stepped out the side door holding a mop bucket. She froze when she saw the scene. Her eyes locked onto Keanu, not with suspicion but with a flicker of recognition. She'd seen him before, sure. But now in the light, with that calm way of speaking, that familiar tilt of the head, something clicked. She didn't say anything, just watched, wide-eyed as the guard shoved Keanu lightly on the shoulder. "Back off, buddy. This ain't your business." Keanu didn't flinch, but the older man did. He grabbed Keanu's arm. "Don't," he whispered. "It's not worth it. I'll go." And just like that, the fight drained out of the moment. The older man picked up his duffel bag, shoulders hunched, and walked away without looking back. Keanu wanted to follow, to say something, to fix it, but he knew that right now his presence only made things worse. So he stayed, watching as the man disappeared around the corner, head down, hope crumbling with every step. The guards muttered something and walked off. The crowd dispersed. The city moved on like nothing happened, but Keanu couldn't move. He stood there, heart pounding, feeling useless in a way he'd never felt before. Money couldn't fix this. Fame couldn't stop a security guard from treating someone like trash. And his little experiment, his attempt to understand, had just made things harder for the one person who'd shown him kindness. He walked to the side of the building and sat on the cold concrete, head in his hands. Rain threatened again, clouds gathering overhead. What was the point of all this if he couldn't even protect someone from being humiliated? Inside the restaurant, Lena watched through the window. She'd seen everything, and now she was sure. She'd grown up watching his movies. She knew that voice, that stillness in his eyes, but she didn't say a word to anyone. Instead, she filled a large cup with hot coffee, wrapped it in a napkin, and walked outside. She didn't call him by name. Didn't smile like a fan. She just handed him the cup and said, "It's cold out here." He looked up, surprised, took the coffee. "Thank you." She nodded, then added quietly, "He comes back every day, even when they yell, even when it rains. He's got pride, you know. Doesn't ask for much. Just a chance." Keanu sipped the coffee, bitter, strong, perfect. "I know." She hesitated, then said, "If you're who I think you are, why are you doing this?" He met her eyes. "Because I needed to see what it's really like. Not from a car window, not from a donation check, from the ground." She studied him for a long moment. Then softly, "You're going to get recognized soon. People are talking." "I know," he said, "but I can't leave yet. Not after today." She didn't argue, just gave a small nod and went back inside. That afternoon, Keanu wandered the neighborhood, restless. He passed shelters with long lines, Food trucks handing out meals and street corners where people held signs with trembling hands. Everywhere he looked, he saw resilience but also exhaustion, the kind that ran deeper than bones. He thought about the interview. The older man had been so ready, clean shirt, polished shoes, that wrinkled paper clutched like a lifeline. And now, he'd been shamed in public, told he didn't belong, and sent away like a stray dog. How could anyone walk into a job interview after that? As evening fell, Keanu returned to the McDonald's. He sat in the same spot, hoping, waiting. The lights inside glowed warm against the darkening sky. Customers came and went. Lena worked the register, glancing outside every few minutes. Then, just after 8 p.m., a figure appeared down the street. Slow, limping, but walking tall. The older man was back. Keanu stood up. Didn't rush. Just waited. When the man saw him, he stopped. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he said, "I went to the interview anyway." Keanu's breath caught. "And?" "They said I was overqualified, but they offered me a trial shift next week." He almost smiled. Guess looking clean helped. Relief flooded through Keanu. "I'm glad." The man looked at him. Really looked. "You didn't have to stand up for me. Could have made things worse for you." "I couldn't just watch," Keanu said. They sat together in silence for a while. The city hummed around them. Cars chattered, the distant laugh of a child. Normal life moving on. Then the man said, "You're not like the others. You listen like you actually care." Keanu didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "Maybe I needed to remember how to be human." The older man nodded like he understood more than Keanu had said. But the peace didn't last. Around 9 p.m., the same security guards returned, this time with a manager from the McDonald's. They pointed at both of them. "You're banned," the manager said coldly. "Effective immediately. Trespassing if you come back." Keanu stood. "On what grounds?" "Disrupting business. Causing a scene." "There was no scene," Lena called from the doorway. "They were just sitting." The manager shot her a look. "Stay out of this." Keanu felt the weight of it all, the injustice, the fear, the helplessness. But he also felt something else, a decision forming. He turned to the older man. "Tomorrow," he said quietly, "things are going to change." The man frowned. "What do you mean?" Keanu didn't explain. He just placed a hand on his shoulder, a small gesture full of promise, and walked away into the night. He didn't go home. Not yet. He found a payphone, yes, one still worked, and made a call to the outreach group that had helped him plan this. "It's time," he said. "I'm ready." As he hung up, rain began to fall, soft at first, then steady. He stood under a street lamp, water dripping from his hair, and took a deep breath. The experiment was over. But the real work was just beginning, and tomorrow he wouldn't be invisible anymore. Weeks passed, and the story didn't explode like a Hollywood trailer. There were no dramatic headlines or viral videos with clickbait titles. Instead, it spread the old-fashioned way, through people talking to people. A bus driver told his neighbor. A teacher mentioned it to her students. A nurse shared it with her coworkers during a coffee break. "You know that McDonald's downtown?" They'd say, "They're actually letting folks use the restroom now, even if they don't buy anything. And they've got little care kits behind the counter." At first, corporate headquarters got nervous. Franchise owners called, worried about liability, cleanliness, setting a precedent. But then something unexpected happened. Sales didn't drop, they went up. Regular customers started coming more often, not just for the food, but because they liked what the place stood for. Families brought extra socks to drop off. Local barbers offered free haircuts in the parking lot on Sundays. A nearby laundromat began letting people wash one, load for free if they showed a hygiene kit from the restaurant. The manager, who'd once been ready to call the police on two men sitting quietly, now greeted everyone by name, whether they ordered a meal or just needed a place to rest. He even started keeping a small notebook where people could write down job leads or housing tips. It sat on the counter next to the ketchup packets. As for the older man, he didn't just get the trial shift, he kept the job. Showed up early, stayed late, treated every customer like family. Within 2 months, he moved into the apartment Keanu had arranged, but he didn't stop there. He began volunteering with the same outreach group that had helped Keanu plan his week on the streets. He'd go to shelters not as a savior, but as someone who'd been there. "I tell them it's okay to hope," he said in a quiet interview with a local community paper. Because someone once gave me that chance when I'd almost stopped believing. Keanu didn't disappear after that day. He didn't give big speeches or pose for photos with "I help the homeless" signs. Instead, he showed up regularly, quietly. Sometimes he'd be at the shelter, sorting donated clothes. Other times he'd sit in the back of a support meeting listening more than speaking. He never announced his visits. Often people didn't even realize it was him until he'd already left. And that was how he wanted it. One rainy Tuesday, a young woman working the night shift at the McDonald's saw him sitting alone in a booth near the window, sipping coffee. She almost didn't recognize him. He looked tired, like anyone else after a long day. She gathered her courage and walked over. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked. He smiled. "Just a refill if you don't mind." She brought the pot, poured slowly. Then hesitantly she said, "My cousin. He's been sleeping in his car. Says he's too proud to ask for help." Keanu didn't offer money or grand solutions. He just said, "Tell him the Outreach Center on 5th Street has a program for people in transition. They'll help him find work, not just a bed. And tell him, it's not weakness to accept a hand. It's courage." She nodded, eyes glistening. "Thank you." "No," he said gently. "Thank you for caring enough to ask." That was the thing about what happened. It wasn't really about Keanu Reeves, the movie star. It was about what happened when one person chose to see another person fully, without labels or assumptions, and how that small act sparked something bigger. Within 6 months, 3 other McDonald's locations in the city adopted similar programs, not because of a corporate mandate, but because their managers had visited the downtown spot and seen how it worked. Not perfectly, but humanely. A grocery store chain followed, offering free access to restrooms and charging stations. Even the city council took notice, holding meetings about how public spaces could better serve everyone, not just those with wallets full of cash. But the real change wasn't in policies or programs. It was in glances, in the way a cashier might now say good morning to someone who looked worn down, in how a security guard might ask, "You okay?" instead of "move along." In the quiet understanding that being poor didn't mean being less worthy of kindness. Keanu never made a big announcement about continuing his involvement. He just kept showing up. Sometimes he'd bring books for a literacy program. Other times he'd help serve meals at a community kitchen. He never took credit. If someone thanked him, he'd just say, "I'm learning too." One evening, as he walked home from the shelter, he passed the McDonald's. Through the window, he saw the older man laughing with a group of co-workers wiping down tables after closing. He looked tired but peaceful, like he belonged. Keanu stood there for a moment, hands in his pockets, watching. No cameras, no crowd. Just a man who'd been told he didn't matter and now did. That was the shocking ending. Not a twist, not a stunt, but a truth. Real change doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it starts with a cheeseburger left on a ledge, a clean shirt folded on cardboard, or a stranger who chooses to see you when the world looks away. And the most amazing part? It wasn't over. It was just beginning. Because once people realized they could make a difference, not with millions, but with minutes, with attention, with simple decency, they started doing it on their own. A teenager saved lunch money to buy socks for people outside the bus station. A retired teacher offered free resume help at the library. A mechanic fixed bikes for free so people could get to job interviews. Keanu knew he hadn't fixed homelessness. No one person could. But he'd helped remind people that behind every worn jacket, every tired face, every silent presence on the sidewalk, there was a story, a name, a dream that hadn't died, just gone quiet. And sometimes all it took to bring that dream back to life was one person saying, "You're still here." And that matters, so he kept walking, not as a hero, just as a human being doing what he could, one small act at a time. Because in the end, that's all any of us can do, and it's more than enough.